projectL is unneeded. It's a game that's destined to be a day late and a dollar short, a game that serves no real purpose and ultimately won't be very impactful if it goes the way it's currently planned to. And yet, everyone on the internet seems to think this game is going to be the second coming of Christ and completely unearth the fighting game genre as we know it. projectL is Riot Games' fighting game based off of their only actual good IP, League of Legends. League of Legends is a huge game, and a fighting game based around it is sure to get more eyes on the FGC and more new players than ever before. In theory. Yeah, a lot of people will probably play projectL, yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of people's first fighting games, and yeah, a couple people may just stay around the genre, but not nearly as many as people are claiming there's gonna be. Many people say projectL is going to completely change the fighting game genre as we know it. And just look at this example from totally credible non-clickbait video from fighting game YouTuber Globco.
I expect this to be a somewhat controversial video, so I will do my best to stay as neutral as possible. Spent over 20 hours doing nothing but research on projectL, and my conclusion is simple. After this game comes out, there is no coming back. Imagine for a second that someone starts playing fighting games for the very first time, and the game they pick up is projectL. This is their first fighting game ever. All the concepts that you already know and take for granted, they learned from this game. We all had our first fighting game, and whether we like it or not, that ends up defining the fighting game players that we become. For instance, Dragon Ball FighterZ was the first fighting game that I took seriously. I think there are a lot of upsides to that, but there are some downsides too. For instance, I don't play charge characters. So if your first game is projectL, why would you ever want to learn how to do a quarter circle motion? And if that game is bringing so many new players into the scene, what happens to the other fighting games? Are they going to try to captivate a piece of that new fighting game audience? Or will they just settle for taking second place?
The issue I have with this sentiment is that it's completely biased and viewed only from the lens of himself, and yet people are clamoring at it as if it's a fact. Now, I'm sure most of us are familiar with the term clickbait, and if you're not, a good example of it would be the video that I showed you. It's a very uninformed and unfactual theory crafting video presented as objective truth and some sort of prophecy. I started playing fighting games with For Honor and Smash. Do those even count to most of you? Probably not, but they sort of do. The point is, I still learned how to do motion inputs when I moved to Dragon Ball FighterZ, and after Dragon Ball FighterZ, I still learned how to do dragon punches and actual combos, half circles, 6, 3, 2, 1, 4, 6 inputs, 360s, etc. I even picked up charge characters in Skullgirls. So a very big part of that video's argument is basically invalid to me and a lot of other people. Oh, but Luna, aren't you projecting a lot of your own personal experience into that? Wouldn't that make it kind of a biased argument point? And yes, that's exactly the issue with the original claim as well. People who actually play fighting games and play them long term go out of their way to learn these things though. Do Dragon Ball players learn combos, or do they just mash X to perform a hyper combo as the game tells them to? Do players learn how to super? Do Street Fighter players learn how to IAD when they play Accent Core? Yes. And if players don't learn any of this stuff and just choose to just mash randomly, there's a pretty good chance that they never would and probably didn't really like or get the genre to begin with. projectL is marketed towards beginners to the genre, but it doesn't prepare you for it at all, and in all honesty, it's too late to be important. projectL is a day late and a dollar short. When it was announced, it was an interesting thing that would be really huge in about a year or so. That was like 4 years ago. Street Fighter 6 is already out and blows that concept out of the water. If you're new and don't want to learn motion inputs or combos yet, you can just use modern controls. And if you want to take the time to learn, or if you already know how to, you can just play on Classic. And it's also Street Fighter. Everybody knows, oh, that's fighting game right there. This allows for an excellent new player experience while also keeping it fun for people returning to the franchise and the genre. projectL doesn't have this, and as we currently know, it won't. It's a mash X reform hyper combo game with no motion inputs, which is sure good for new players, but bad for people who actually want to learn more of the genre, play any other fighting game, or people who have played any other fighting game and want to have more fine control of your character and find motion inputs fun, which is most, if not all, people who play fighting games already. If players are just never going to learn how to do these cool things, then they likely aren't committed to the genre anyway, and companies shouldn't market games for them because they're not going to stick around and new players aren't going to find that game very interesting. Just look at DNF Duel. Players who are new to the genre and pick up projectL are just going to mash because that's what the game tells them to do, and it's a coin flip on who will win between two noobs mashing. Then they will go, "This game sucks, it's just a skillless button masher," and then play something they already know they like and that they think takes actual skill. Something like, I don't know, League of fucking Legends? The game this game is based on, the game that everyone who's new to projectL will be coming from. They're just going to go back. They're just gonna go back. They're not gonna be interested. And by the way, let's just take a small detour and talk about who this game is marketed to. Because it's really not fighting game players, it's Riot's audience, it's Riot's demographic. And what do you need to have to entertain a Riot's demographic? Well, let's start with probably about 200 playable characters, balance patches every 2 weeks, just insanely predatory FOMO, so people get really addicted to buying new shit, and they have to have this like weird battle pass thing to keep coming back so they don't get FOMO'd, purposely addicting gameplay loops, and whatever the fuck this is.
For every kill you get, I'll give you an ooh.
Alright, bet.
Oh my god, I'm so nervous.
Aw, you're adorable.
Ooh.
They need all of this just to be entertained and keep playing the game. There's really none of that in fighting games. Sure, you'll get new characters every once in a while, but you're not going to get new characters as often as you are in League or Valorant. You're never going to have a 200 character plus roster. You're not going to be getting balance changes every 2 weeks. You're not really going to be getting these really weird TikToks. And you're not getting much FOMO to keep you addicted to the game and keep logging on every day to check if you got what you actually wanted to have the privilege to spend money on. Unless they add that, and then in that case, Jesus fucking Christ. New players to the genre aren't going to stick around usually, and that's apparent for all games. If you just look at the Steam achievement percentages or just player analytic charts for any game, you will see that not many people who actually buy the game stick around to it for that long or that far into the game if it's single player or something. And games are pretty much usually carried by a dedicated fan base. projectL isn't going to cement itself in the FGC because it lacks a lot of what FGC players like about fighting games, and a large portion of new players are just going to go back to League and Valorant after mashing a couple of matches and getting bored, because fighting games also don't really teach you how to play them, especially if you don't need to learn combos or motion inputs, which is a problem of the genre in and of itself, honestly, and is even more obvious in projectL, where people aren't going to know what to do, and most people who don't know fighting games aren't even going to know that there's more to learn. So, I don't think projectL is going to be a game changer, and honestly, I wanted it to be, but I really doubt that it will be. If you disagree with me or think differently, please feel free to not leave a comment because I really don't want to hear it. Thank you for watching.